Iran has shut the Strait of Hormuz and has vowed to keep it closed.
Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps says the Strait of Hormuz is now closed.
Well, Iran's Revolutionary Guards are sending radio transmissions to ships, warning them that no ship is allowed to pass the Strait of Hormuz.
Imagine a place so small that you could almost see one side from the other, yet so important that people all over the world quietly depend on it every single day. Ships pass through it like giant floating cities. They carry things people need, fuel, food, and goods that travel from one land to another. If this narrow path were ever blocked, many nations would feel the change, even from far away. But here is the mystery. Could a place like this, hidden between lands and waters, have been known long ago? Could it have been part of a much bigger story, one written thousands of years ago? And even more surprising, could something like this be connected to the words of the Bible? Far away from many of us, between the lands of the Iran and Oman, there is a narrow stretch of water called the Strait of Hormuz. It is not very wide. In some places, it is only about 33 kilometers across. Yet, even though it is small, it connects a very important body of water called the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. Because of this, many ships must pass through it. It is like a doorway between regions, a gate that connects one part of the world to another. That is why people sometimes think of it as a gate of nations. But here is where the story becomes even more interesting. The Bible often speaks about gates. In the world of the Bible, gates were not just doors in walls, they were places of power. They were where leaders sat, where decisions were made, and where people gathered to talk, trade, and settle matters. In Genesis chapter 22, verse 17, God makes a promise and says, "Your descendants shall possess the gate of their enemies." This was not just about a wooden or stone gate. It meant something much bigger. It meant having control, influence, and authority. If you controlled the gate, you controlled what came in and what went out. You controlled the future of that place. Now think again about a narrow water passage where nations depend on ships passing through. It begins to sound very similar, does it not? This is where we must be careful and thoughtful. The Bible does not directly mention the Strait of Hormuz by name. You will not find that exact title written in its pages, but the Bible does speak often about regions, seas, and trade routes in the ancient world. Many scholars believe that areas near this strait were part of ancient trade networks known long ago. Ships carried spices, gold, and precious goods through waters not too far from this location. In the book of Ezekiel, chapter 27, there is a description of great trading cities and ships bringing goods from distant lands. It paints a picture of a world connected by water, where nations depended on these routes to survive and grow. Even if the strait itself is not named, the idea of important pathways, gates of movement and trade, is clearly present. The Bible often uses the sea as a symbol. In Daniel chapter 7, verse 3, it says, "And 4 great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other." This shows that the sea can represent nations, peoples, and great movements in history. In Revelation chapter 17, verse 15, it explains even more clearly. "The waters you saw are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages." So, when we think about a narrow place where waters connect and nations depend on it, we are not just thinking about geography. We are thinking about connection. We are thinking about how the world is tied together. Long ago, people traveled slowly. Today, everything is connected. Goods move across oceans. Messages travel in seconds. Nations depend on one another in ways that people in ancient times could only imagine. And yet, the Bible already spoke about a world where nations rise, fall, and interact. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 7, Jesus said, "For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom." These words remind us that history is always moving, but they also remind us of something comforting. Even when the world changes, God's plan does not. So, is the Strait of Hormuz mentioned in the Bible? Not by name, but the idea behind it, the idea of a gate, is everywhere in Scripture. A gate is a place of decision. A gate is a place of movement. A gate is a place where paths cross. And throughout the Bible, gates represent moments where something important happens. In Psalm 24, verse 7, it says, "Lift up your heads, O you gates, that the King of glory may come in." This reminds us that not all gates are about power on earth. Some gates are about something far greater. Empires have risen and fallen throughout history. They build their strength, they control pathways, they expand their reach, but nothing on earth lasts forever. In Daniel chapter 2, verse 44, it says, "The God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed." This is a powerful promise. It tells us that while nations may depend on gates, there is a kingdom that does not depend on anything fragile. It cannot be shaken. It cannot be taken away. When we look at the world, it is easy to feel unsure. There are many changes, many movements, many things we do not fully understand. But the Bible gives a gentle and steady message. In John chapter 14, verse 27, Jesus says, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid." This is not just a message for one time, it is a message for all time. It reminds us that even when the world feels uncertain, we can have peace. The gates of nations may change. Some may grow strong, others may become less important. But there is one invitation in the Bible that remains open to everyone. In Revelation chapter 3, verse 8, it says, "See, I have set before you an open door, and no one can shut it." This is a beautiful picture. While the world focuses on gates that can open and close, God offers a door that always remains open. A door of hope, a door of peace, a door of everlasting life. So, is the Strait of Hormuz mentioned in the Bible? Not directly, but its meaning, its role as a narrow and important passage, helps us understand something deeper about the world and about Scripture. It reminds us that small places can have great importance. It reminds us that connections between nations have always mattered. And most of all, it reminds us that while the world's gates may change, God's promises do not. The story is not just about a place on a map. It is about a greater journey, one that continues to unfold, guiding us toward a kingdom that will never fade.